Hey everybody, Ed here with the Digital Digest, and today I wanted to share a quick video about the iPhone 6 and iPhone 6 Plus. As you noticed, I have the iPhone 5S next to the 6 and then the 6 Plus. The key difference really, in my opinion, being all about the screen real estate. Yes, there are other specification upgrades like every generation of iPhone receives, but the key one for most consumers this year is really all about that extra screen real estate. So with the iPhone 6, you're getting a bump up to 4.7 inches, which I think is very close to just about the perfect screen size for a pocket-friendly phone, and also a phone that's going to be friendly to just about every hand size. So comfort when it comes to use is still critical, and especially for Apple users making this transition to much larger handsets, this is really going to be the sweet spot. But then for those of you that have always craved a Galaxy Note-esque experience, which now has become, I won't say quite as standard as the 4.7 or 5.2 inch range that the mainstream of popular Android phones, as well as Windows phones, occupy, you can step up to the Note-esque 5.5 inch display on the 6 Plus. Of course, the Note 4 does have a 5.7 inch display with higher resolution, a Super AMOLED. This isn't about comparisons because anyone who's purchasing the iPhone really isn't interested in the competition, in my opinion. That doesn't mean that some Android users won't want to pick up the new iPhone. Certainly they will. But when it comes to features, iOS 8 really isn't bringing you to another generation. And I'll skip to the next graphic here, which is really what, in my opinion, I think this sums up best why I'm not excited about the iPhone 6, and I think a lot of other, I won't say Android users for the last 5 years necessarily, but even if you only used it for the last year, you already know what to expect in any high-end Android phone. But when you look at what the iPhone 6 brings together, I'm not going to say that it's exactly the Nexus 4, but the graphic makes a very good point. When you look at that breakdown, that both have a 4.7 inch screen, very comparable display at that, although you could make the argument that the Nexus 4 screen may actually have been better. It's possible. The 750p resolution is technically lower than the 760p resolution that the Nexus 4 sported. So if you are going to go strictly on that pixel density, the Nexus 4 actually tops the iPhone 6. Keep in mind, look at that release date, November 2012. NFC finally on the iPhone. That is a very good thing. In fact, I think it's going to solidify Google Wallet and really change the way we pay for things. And it really just took Apple integrating it. So kudos for doing that. I don't know why it took so long. But I'm glad to see it there. I know they couldn't make their own, and that's probably why they never wanted to integrate NFC. They wanted their own system, but thankfully adoption and adaptation here is going to work out, I think, in all of our favor. The notification actions, widgets, third-party keyboards finally coming to the iPhone. But even with the extra real estate, if you haven't seen it already, the new iPhone, the 6 Plus, does not make use of that extra screen real estate. So that big complaint that many Apple users would have when taking on Android devices or tablets, larger screen devices like the Note, that Android was clunky, did not make proper use of the extra screen real estate. I don't know what Apple was thinking. And I guess it just shows the growing pains of introducing larger phones that are outside of what they are traditionally good at doing. And it's something that companies like Samsung has been doing for years now. And that does make a big difference. When you're doing it since 2012, you're going to have far more experience and hopefully be able to make a better device. And when it comes to larger devices, specifically in smartphones, it seems very obvious, at least from what I've seen so far, that the iPhone 6 Plus doesn't have anything in its favor unless you are a complete loyalist to iOS. When it comes to actual features and capability, there's just so much polish missing when I can tell you that the keyboard isn't optimized to the screen real estate. That's such a basic feature that shouldn't even be something I should be mentioning. Input is the most critical thing on a phone, and if your big bragging right is now that you got third-party keyboards, make use of them properly. Make use of your own keyboard properly. Typing suggestions, of course, this is like a joke at this point. Cross-app communication, congratulations. Cloud photo backup, I'm not going to even touch at the present moment. And battery stats, also on par. Obviously, iPhone 6 definitely should be doing better than the Nexus 4 on battery life, but the fact that you can control quite a bit with just about any Android device in order to get even more battery life out of it is a completely different story. And then the joke at the bottom, I'm not going to even get into, but the point is kind of the same theme here, that in 2016 you might see wireless charging, you might see water resistance, IR blasters, all of these features that have become standard. And I didn't bring up specifications here because if you're buying an iPhone, you're not buying it for its specs, and that's important as well. And I say that because even though there is a new processor in there, the amount of RAM, the camera rating, at least on the actual sensor, and of course the glass to sensor pairing is important, and Apple generally does well with their cameras, don't get me wrong. Got to give credit where it's due. Their fingerprint scanner is also better, at least in its current existence and how it works. I don't think it's a very secure way to manage your personal information, but if you do want to use it, it is going to perform better than what Samsung presently has. Maybe the Note 4 will change that, but all of these features mentioned at the bottom that are standard now, I don't know when you'll ever see them on an iPhone. Maybe you don't care, but once Apple usually integrates something, people tend to care, which is ironic. But more importantly, as I was saying, the internals on this phone, I mean, the amount of RAM and the general features are something you would see on a free Android phone. I can't reiterate that enough. Yes, the processor is new. I'll give that credit. But everything else, 1 gig of RAM, you can say as much as you'd like about the quality of iOS 8 and how well it can run, and that's all it needs. But I really see this as a margin grab, not about what it needs. And that's part of the reason the new iPhone doesn't sport, 2K resolution on the 6 or the 6 Plus. I have a feeling that what they were willing to spend, they being Apple, on the innards of this phone really wasn't going to permit them to run things at a higher resolution without compromising the experience, like they already did with transitioning maybe prematurely, too quickly, or too late, however you want to look at it, to larger devices. So a little bit of everything there. So a lot to like if you are a die-hard purist for Apple, because you're now getting the option you never had, which is a larger phone. And I know there are so many Apple lovers out there that are completely enamored with the Plus. I mean, it's sold out faster. As far as I know, numbers already fantastic, over 4 million sold in 24 hours, even though I didn't see a breakdown. Great numbers. But when I look at this, as a notification goes off for my G3 there, I can't help but be reminded of that we're looking at a device that just, again, really is just a larger version of its past self. And such incremental updates that do literally bring it into 2012, which isn't a bragging right, unfortunately. So, again, a lot to like for Apple users. I think anyone who's already, into the Android system or even Windows is not going to look at this and in any way be pulled away because of the larger screen real estate. There's just not enough of a reason to cross over. And NFC finally coming on board. The watch, yes, it's an accessory that looks good, but much like Android wearables, which I'll be reviewing the Moto 360 shortly, infancy is a polite term for all of these devices. They're all in beta as far as I'm concerned, maybe even alpha, depending on how you look at it, since I've tried these years ago and was not impressed, and it doesn't look like things have moved that far. But again, the iPhone 6 will sell an incredible number, I'm sure of that. I can say that without any hesitation. And marketing helps, and so does the prowess of where they began. Unfortunately, where they're at is a completely different position that reminds me in many ways of where RIM was in the mid-2000s, before Apple really all of a sudden helped destroy them and put them where they are today. And I'm not saying Apple is going to be destroyed, it's just getting lazy, sitting on your hands, losing Steve Jobs, whatever you want to peg this on. The iPhone 6 kind of embodies that beginning of the end, where Apple is now forced to really offer competing products because the competition now has been making the market no longer does Apple have that sort of capability, which is the first time in a really long time in the tech world. And you have to wonder, is the iPad Pro next? How many more products are going to emulate the competition now? Especially when I see the one-handed use on this phone. That's another thing that, Samsung already has in the market. So do other manufacturers who've been making larger handsets because they know that those are things they need. Apple's version might be a little bit more polished, or less for that matter, from what I've seen, since it actually omits some features of the keyboard. So look, just a preview. Clearly, I do have bias when it comes to Apple. I give them all the credit in the world for really setting the standard for what a smartphone and a tablet needed to be in many ways, but they've also always had their own path when it comes to what they were going to give consumers and what they deemed to be the right experience, whereas that wasn't the path for me personally. And they still gouge margins like no other. I don't care who you pick. Again, the internals of this phone reek of a free Android phone at this at present point. Of course, the experience and build quality won't be what you get with Apple, but considering what's inside the phone, I won't say is equally as important, but very close. That, at least for me, puts me in a position that I could never really consider an Apple phone, especially already having seen the growth of Android and where things have really gone. And I know that things are only getting better, and there's just so much capability when I look at essentially a one-trick pony that's become a bloated whale at this point to a degree. But the iPhone 6 will do well, despite all of that, of course. So again, a turning point, positive, negative, I'm not sure yet, but it's never good to see the innovator begin to replicate the competition. At any rate, hope you all enjoyed. Any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. And of course, as usual, please feel free to subscribe. Later.